Good afternoon to all of you, and I would like to thank eHealth for giving this opportunity. I would welcome all the guests on the dais and the people sitting in the hall. Just a brief introduction. I represent Frost & Sullivan, which is a consulting firm, growth consulting firm, and we regularly track the medical technology, healthcare technology, and the healthcare delivery space, both from an investee and investor perspective. And what we have, I would just give a brief roundup of what we have realized, what is happening from a health investment perspective into this sector. If we see the story if we go 5 years back, what we see is that majority of the investment was directed towards the healthcare delivery centers, be it a hospital space, be it the diagnostic services space. Gradually, the companies, the PE firms, or other seed capital funds have realized the importance of investing and the strategic and monetary importance of investing into medical technology companies also. And when we say medical technology, by default, it covers the information technology, healthcare information technology, as well as the devices and the diagnostics landscape. And if we see few deals which have happened in the past, there has been a considerable amount of interest from PE firms where we have seen investments in companies like Trivitron, we have seen investments in companies like NextGen and HealthyGen. Simultaneously, we are seeing interest from PE firms in terms of investing into healthcare IT companies. But what we also realize is that at some point of time, there is a sort of mismatch between the objective of the fund and the objective of the entrepreneur who is seeking the funding. And this mismatch is purely in terms of the deal size. And PE firms, the typical deal size which they look at, the bandwidth of the companies which are growing into this space, typically talking about the medical technology and healthcare information technology, they don't have that sort of capacity to absorb that fund. And then a typical problem comes that they grow up and then the PE firms will look at investing. Again, there has been some sort of development on that where there have been funds focused on the healthcare technology and IT space who are looking in small tranches, something investment in the range of $2 million, $3 million, or $10 million. So that problem is being taken care of, but still we are in a transition phase. And I think we have a lot to go ahead in terms of seeing a higher activity from PE firms, seed funds, venture capital funds, in terms of investing into the medical technology and healthcare information technology companies. From here onwards, I would pass on the baton to Mr. Anupam to express his thoughts on the same.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. Just briefly introducing myself, I'm an engineer by background, electronics. I did my electronics engineering from IIT Kharagpur. Worked for a couple of years at Samsung into their electronics division. Did my MBA from IIM Lucknow in 2004, passed out in 2004. Worked for 2 years in the consumer products industry, ITC Limited, looking after the sales, business development, market research functions. Then shifted into pharmaceuticals, so that's probably as close to healthcare as I get. I worked for a company called MQO Pharmaceuticals, a privately held firm based out of Pune, looking after the international business development, US, European regulated markets. 2 years there, and then I started off on Health Design. Briefly about the company, we started in 2007, that's when we founded the company. 2008, we commercially started operations. Health Design primarily is a personal health management platform where we help consumers store and track their health and medical records, create unique profiles on the basis of these records, and then provide them with recommendations, products, services, interventions if required. Essentially talking about personalized healthcare delivery. So that's the consumer part of the business. We have an enterprise part of the business where we help healthcare providers, hospitals, diagnostic labs, pathology labs, doctors, pharmacy chains, to manage their health and medical records internally, as well as to provide CRM, patient relationship management solutions to them. Essentially looking after care outside the premises of a hospital. So what happens essentially once a patient kind of leaves the hospital. We got funded in the in December 2007 by seed fund to the tune of about $1 million. I mean, the fundraising experience for us, both of the founders, me and Ashish, was the co-founder of the company. We were first generation entrepreneurs. So absolutely no clue, as to what goes about in terms of raising funding. When we started with the vision of creating a health information network pan-India, which is essentially, aggregated on the patient. And I think among all the delegates today and representatives from illustrious companies, probably we are the only one, arguably, who represents the consumer side of the healthcare business. Most of the discussion in the first couple of sessions, even previously in India, has been happening on the healthcare provider side. A lot of money is kind of getting pumped into erection of hospitals, commissioning of hospitals, medical equipments, diagnostics, all or focused on the doctors from a pharmaceutical company's perspective. We represent the interests of the consumers here, and essentially trying to create a system which does not displace the healthcare delivery system. We're partnering with the healthcare delivery system, but creating the whole healthcare landscape around the patient. Essentially saying that the system is to service the consumers, the patients. What is it that will take to help us make what is it that will take for us to help the consumers make better healthcare decisions? So that's what we kind of stand for. A couple of anecdotal evidences. When we started, we built up this platform, and our understanding was we've got a beautiful product at hand, and people will kind of just jump at it. So the first couple of companies that we approached to were hospitals, healthcare providers, doctors, insurance companies, and the first question that we were asked was, how many consumers do you have? So we said we don't have any consumers. I mean, we just have this fantastic product which you should, which we think you should be using, and this is the kind of value that it will bring to you. So we said, come back when you have consumers on your platform. The second eye opener for us was, we were talking to insurance companies, and some of the models that we had taken from Western countries, typically US, Canada, and to some extent some European countries. Where we said, for an insurance company, it makes a lot of sense to provide these kind of services to their consumers, health insurance consumers, largely because it has an impact on the bottom line. If I can, empirically, or the system can empirically prove that a person on such a platform, proactively seeking health information, proactively taking care about his health, essentially reduces the health risk of the individual. Right? We approached a couple of companies, and one of the largest private life insurance company at that point of time. I'll not take the name. They wanted to do this for themselves exclusively, and 3 months into this, just left our job, with a grand vision. We said, we will not do it for you. In hindsight, that was probably a good decision, largely because we said we'll keep this, platform stakeholder agnostic. We'll keep it neutral because it's targeted at the consumer. Let the consumer make those choices rather than us who kind of govern choices currently for the consumer. Subsequent to raising funding from seed fund, we shifted our base. Pune was where we started. We shifted our base to Bombay, it being a large market. Trying to provide proof of concept for the product, both from the consumer's perspective as well as the healthcare provider perspective. Today we serve about 500,000 consumers pan-India through internet, which was the choice of medium largely because it's ubiquitous, very, very cost effective to develop. Now we've recently forayed into mobile solutions essentially on the SMS space in terms of interacting with the Healthizen platform. When we started with a consumer subscription model. So we said, people like you and me would pay X amount of money, essentially 400 rupees at that point of time, to avail of these services. To our credit, we got 3 people to pay actually within the 3 months of launching. One of them was a very, very close friend of mine. One of them was our investor. We forced them to pay. And there was one third gentleman whom we don't know, but who had probably seen enough promise into the system to be actually paying. We realized that the model is not going to work post Sabir Bhatia, Hotmail. Nobody wants to pay anything on the internet. Most of us Indians specifically. So we said, we'll kind of keep the model free for the consumer, because essentially one of the critical success factors for us was, a large number of consumers using it, a large number of healthcare providers using it, which is when the ecosystem develops. Right? So we said we'll keep it free for the consumer and, figure out avenues where to make money outside of this, either from stakeholders who are interested in the consumer's health or from the consumers himself, where we are providing value which is either compatible or at least comparable to the offline healthcare delivery system currently. This thought led us to partnering with about 350 plus healthcare providers who provide their services through our platform. We provide enterprise level services to them, like I said, in terms of records management, CRM modules, etc. So that, in a nutshell, is the Healthizen story primarily. In terms of investment in the healthcare IT space, the space has seen a lot of action. When we started, and traditionally there have been HIS, LIMS, EMR, softwares which were already there in India. Most of the doctors or hospitals that we would approach to would have, pardon me the phrase, but would have burned their fingers with one of these, people, and were IT shy. So we quickly changed our positioning from saying, okay, we are an IT solutions provider to, consumer healthcare provider. We had doctors who would go and talk to doctors, so probably that makes more sense to them rather than an engineer like me, going and talking to them and explaining IT in my own lingo. So that helped, in terms of getting a decent level of traction with the doctors, care provider community. Like I was saying, healthcare IT has been there for quite a long time. We've seen the prevalence of IT in the financial services space. And just take on a cue from Dr. Manchanda in the previous panel. She was mentioning about how they have modeled their pathology labs, diagnostic business on the banking industry. Why banking industry? Because IT has a huge role to play there. It has been able to penetrate tremendously into the industry. Healthcare, of course, is far more fragmented. It's the healthcare delivery is much more complex than a financial services transaction. Probably one of the reasons why IT has not taken off the way it should have been there. But yes, a lot of models that even we envisage at Healthizen have been borrowed from the financial industry. Processes, systems that we could take from there and remodel it on the healthcare industry, something which will provide higher value to the consumer, to the patient, and make everybody's life a little more easier. Is something that we have been trying to do. So.
Thanks, Anupam, for your thoughts. As Anupam told that they are primarily into the B2C space. Simultaneously, we have Malika over here, who is into the B2B space, and she is typically working on a segment where we are tracking it a lot in terms of HIS, LIS, PAC, CMR, and just to share a few thought processes, Malika, before you start, there is a lot of confusion amongst the healthcare providers that they don't see health IT as an integrated thing. Rather, they see it in parts and parcels. So, be it a EMR, a separate piece, a PACS as a separate piece, and HIS as a separate piece. And though they may be totally right in their thought processes, but purely from a vendor perspective, I don't think that they are able to get those synergies which a vendor can offer if he gives a totally integrated solution. And from there, the problem rolls down to that companies are not able to grow up in size because they are tackling one part of the market or the other part of the market. So with these words, I hand it over to Malika.
Thank you so much. I would agree, with Jayant and also with Anupam when he says, there are 3,000 players in this space who are looking to expand into the health IT space. Every hospital has had an IT implementation where they have burnt their fingers. I think we would be one of those people with whom they've burnt their fingers, what we've learned over the years. Just to give you a brief background, I'm a doctor by profession, did an MBA after that, worked in hospital administration with Apollo Hospitals for a while, and then moved into a company called Amil, where I built their medical distribution division, and then took over as CEO of NextGen. In terms of my IT background, I would say I learned how to use email in 2002. In 2004, I probably learned how to switch on a computer. And now I'm struggling with the concepts of what middleware is and what databases is, and part of the I would say the minutiae that you learn while you're part of an IT company. NextGen eSolutions was founded in 2005 with the view to enter the health IT space. They started out with a couple of solutions. One was a niche IT solution which was targeted at cath labs. So it was targeted only at creating a solution called Cardiologics, which operationalized reporting for doctors. Subsequent to that, they developed a product called Hospilogics, which was a hospital information system. There must be at least 75 providers in the HIS space in India. NextGen got seed funding in 2005, and then subsequently they got PE funding in 2008 through a firm called Loomis Partners. As Jayant described, there was a huge infusion of equity, and one of the first things that the fund did was to renovate the facility. Ask any struggling entrepreneur and they'll tell you, we don't want the facility renovated. I'd rather hire a couple of sales guys. So this is one of the typical problems that we face. Subsequent to that, Loomis invested heavily on improving the face value of NextGen, a very important part of a new company, but unfortunately the sales end got neglected. They didn't realize that investing in sales meant actually having individual agents in multiple areas helping to push your product rather than having 3 people in one area. Subsequent to that, what happened was the large amount of money that they invested over 2 years ran out, and Amil per se started distributing. The company that I set up the medical distribution division for started distributing for a NextGen eSolutions. In 6 months, through this distribution partnership and through the geographical reach that we have, we've managed to triple revenues over last year. Subsequent to that, Amil decided to acquire strategic stake in NextGen, and which is where I came in and was appointed the CEO of the company. So I speak from both the investor and the investee standpoint when I say that we have been burnt and we have learned. So let me give you an idea of what happened when investment happened initially in NextGen. The company invested a lot of money. New people were hired. Typically, people with high profile, engineer MBA, doctor MBA kind of people to push the product. We didn't realize that what we needed was people on the ground pushing the product at that point of time. With the heavy investments in salaries, with the heavy investment in an office in Nehru Place at that point of time, the company started going downhill because sales just did not measure up to the expectation that was set. What typically happens with IT companies, and I think maybe some of the investors here would be able to help us with their views on this, is that since the lag time for the product sale, the lead time for the product sale is high, by the time you put in the money and by the time sales actually take off, there's a long period when the company actually starts to take off. And it's actually being able to model that gap, which I think is very important when you look at investing. So instead of perhaps a 2-year or 3-year investment horizon, PE firms could potentially look at a 7 to 10-year horizon. I don't think if that works for them. I don't know if that works for them, but that is one of the challenges that we faced as a health IT company. Subsequent to that, the other issue was that all the money came in at one go. I think that if you're able to stagger investment, that would help the company control. These are basically, IT companies are typically not cash-rich when they start out. It's a group of developers who are looking, to create something. When you give them a lot of money, they start spending money on all sorts of little software programs that they wouldn't need otherwise. So either you need a tracking system in place where you track the way that the company is spending money, or you need to infuse that capital maybe quarterly, maybe monthly, maybe 6 monthly, I don't know. But perhaps a staged investment of capital would help the company grow in a, well, look at spending in a better fashion than they have been spending. So with the second round of investment, what we're doing basically, what Emil is doing is funding the monthly cash burn, rather than looking at, putting in all the money at one go, and which we found has helped to even out, investment and sales are happening parallelly. It helps to control the company's operations. And the CTO, the CEO, people actually think about what they're putting into the company. They think about what they're spending. They think about what resources they need. So instead of hiring an additional 6 people for implementation, we would hire 2, and maybe hire 2 in the next month. From that, I think I would agree with Anupam when he says that consumers in India are not used to paying well. Providers in India are not used to paying. Software तो मतलब 25,000 में 7 वाला बना देता है ना, तो why are you looking at charging me 10 lakhs or 25 lakhs for a solution for a hospital information system? Educating the provider has been a huge task for us. When we started out with implementations initially, we started out at a very low price point. I'm happy to share it. We started out at a price point of 2.5 lakhs per system for a group of hospitals, and we promised to do 4 hospitals for them at that rate. Over time, we've had to educate even our existing customers to tell them, look, implementation costs money. Every time your users don't show up for training, it costs money. The education of the provider has taken us perhaps the last 2 or 3 years, and I think we are now at a point where providers actually understand what goes into an implementation. Our price points in India are still much, much lower than they are internationally. At the same time, we find that they are going up, provided you hit a certain size of hospital. For the smaller hospitals, there's so much competition in the space that you find that they're not willing to pay. So we face similar challenges. We're looking now to move into government projects, international projects as well, which is where we find that the money is. But I think there are lots of people here from the government who would explain that with government projects also come stiff deadlines. They also come with very strict criteria for meeting milestones, which we are sometimes not able to achieve. So whatever we quote, we're going to get about 60 to 70% of it. I think at this point, I would potentially hand this back over to Jayant.
In fact, what Malika and Anupam told, there's a vital question which needs to be answered, that the products and solutions which we are talking about, are they a pull-driven product or are they a push-driven product? And if we are able to make it very clear that if it is a pull-driven, like Malika rightly pointed out, that people are not even willing to pay 10 lakh rupees. So is it that they don't have the money? Is the affordability a challenge, or are they not seeing a value in the total proposition? They feel that why to install a HIS or LIS? And my patients are happy carrying on with their reports all the times. My doctors are happy seeing it in the physical format. So why should I invest that much, that amount of money? So he doesn't see any value coming out of that investment. So I think it is of vital importance for the health IT companies or the medical technology companies to understand the problem of their customer's customer rather than only the problem of the customer. Because if the customer's customer is happy with the status quo, then rest assured that your customer will always be in a state of inertia, and he will not do anything which is going to change that inertia, and typically not anything which costs a lot of money. So I think that is one vital thing which we need to keep in mind, and Vikram would partially agree that from an investor perspective, they also look at this viewpoint, that what is the degree of value which this product will offer to the customer. And if there is, a proof of concept might be a very good idea, but ultimately when the product hits the market, how much you will be able to realize out of that, that is something which we have realized tracking the both sides of the story, the investor and the investee, that typically companies start with a technopreneur at the helm of affairs, and it's at times the technopreneur is so emotionally attached to the company that it becomes difficult for them to take a role of entrepreneur at a later stage when it is called for. So I think that is one vital issue which the company should look at if they are looking at attracting private equity investment, because private equity investment per se doesn't have any emotional attachment. Either it has a strategic aim to it or it has a monetary aim to it. And if either of these aims are not fulfilled, then I doubt whether any private equity investment will invest into any company. Howsoever good the proof of concept is. From here, I would hand it over to Mr. Venumalai, who is into a similar sort of platform at the HIS, LIS, and Health IT. And the only difference between HealthEgen and NextEgen and Avanor, his respective companies, that the company sitting on the representative sitting on the left side of mine have received either a seed capital funding or a private equity funding, whereas it is a startup and they might be looking for something similar in the times to come. So he will share his thought process that how he wants to take us forward and what is the sort of investment he looks at. And also I would like to request, if you can throw some light upon that, whether you look only money as something or you look over and above that, something above that, which a private equity investor should offer to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just quickly a background about Avanor, the company I'm with. Avanor is about 10 years old. We've been in healthcare IT for almost the entire 10 years that we've been in existence. And every once in a while, maybe right from 2005, 2006 onwards, we've gone out to these investor meets and we've met with potential investors. And we've never gotten to the second round. It was always, in fact, we used to wonder within the office why we haven't moved to actually getting into serious discussions with the investors. But in my mind, the Indian healthcare IT firm is fundamentally different from a regular IT firm. I mean, we have international products being sold in the healthcare field. We have equipment from Siemens. We have equipment from GE being sold across the world, including India. But I don't think we have a single instance of Cerner's or McKesson's products being used successfully in India. The scenario here is very different. It's very, very important that implementation be done right in India. We are oftentimes dealing with people who have very moderate levels of education. So they're people with 12th standard or something like that, who are at the front end dealing with customers. And these are the people who use our software. And it is in their hands to say that the software works or it doesn't work. And they can make or break your product. And when you go out there as a fancy IT company and you spout jargon, you immediately turn them off and they come around and you have very low levels of satisfaction from the customer in terms of acceptance and the product suitability for them and so on. So unless an Indian company going out there trying to implement IT consciously tells itself, I am not trying to be an Infosys, I am not trying to be an HCL, and I will not carry myself in that manner when I go out and meet the customer, there is a 75% chance that you will have a dissatisfactory relationship with your customer. Now, if we perceive ourselves to be successful in whatever we're trying to do, which is to bring IT into the hospital, if we perceive ourselves as being something different from the regular IT company, then our operations have to be different. Our whole methodology is different. And that, I think, is a big area of dichotomy between the investors and those of us who are on the ground trying to actually make IT implementations work. When I talk to the investors, they ask me certain key numbers, which everybody knows, but it just doesn't apply in India. McKesson will need $1 million to actually go in and start talking seriously to a hospital. I could say that there isn't even one hospital which is prepared to spend $1 million just for IT in India, if it's less than 300 beds or something like that. So you've got to work out a totally different set of economics. It still works. I mean, every Indian hospital has some form of IT. It still works, but then it works very differently. And that, I think, is where things are going to evolve. The investors are going to realize that IT in India is going to become bigger, but it's going to be very different from how it is in, say, America or in New York or in England. So there's got to be a realization on the part of the investors that this company, a company, trying to service the Indian IT sector is going to be quite different from the typical IT company servicing healthcare industries around the world. I think that realization is very important for us as well, because I remember way back going out to meet a doctor, and he came out and said, we have all these problems. And I started off with very familiar IT jargon. Yes, we've made we put it in our list, and that's an issue. And he just lost his top. He wasn't interested in that. He was dealing with people who were with very serious illnesses there, and he didn't want to listen to jargon. I had to immediately stop being an IT professional from that day onwards. When I went out there and met a doctor, I was, somebody who was servicing a sick person. And I had to have that same kind of, sensitivity within me, and realize that the doctor and the nurse and all of them are working under tremendous pressure from the customer side. So I think from the IT company's perspective, the earlier we accept that we have to be different from a typical IT company, the easier it is going to be for us to actually attack the market. And for the investors, I don't know what the answer is, but you've got to find a different way of evaluating Indian IT companies, because for them to be successful, they have to be different from international healthcare IT companies.
Thanks, sir. Before handing it over to Vikram, I would say it is fortunate for us to have Vikram over here. Not any offenses intended, but I think Vikram is a real representative of private equity, which is suitable from an Indian perspective in terms of the average deal sizes which they do. We were just discussing offline that the average deal size which a private equity firm looks at, whether our medical technology or health IT technology companies do have that bandwidth to absorb that sort of funding also. I mean, they typically look at something like $40 million or $50 million, and a company not even crossing revenues in the range of $1 or $2 million. What will they do with that $40-50 million of funding? So there we see a big mismatch between the objective of the fund and how the business is right now. And also they look at certain key vital numbers which may or may not be there with the company at that point of time of investment. So Vikram over here, I think their deal sizes are typically in that range where a typical Indian medical technology company, when I say indigenous medical technology companies, be it health IT or medical technology, would sort of fit into that scheme of things. So from Vikram, we would like to understand that what is typically you look at from an investor perspective, what is your horizon, and what is the sort of additional help and support which you offer to the companies in addition to the money which you bring to the table?
Thanks, Jan. Actually, first of all, let me congratulate these youngsters here. I think it's very heartening to see this kind of entrepreneurship, the kind of passion and the drive to actually, start the kind of businesses they are in. So it's really, really commendable. And I think it's relevant, to also mention a little bit about my background here, because I think it's important to highlight some of these things, because I've actually experienced these things myself. I actually, before running this fund, I was in the US working with IBM Consulting, basically running the healthcare life sciences practice for them in the US. And that's very, very interesting how actually, the differences in terms of the markets in the US and in India. And I think what's resonating here is very similar kind of a story. So let me, first of all, pick some points from the discussions that are happening here, and the key challenges, both from the entrepreneur's perspective and from the investor's perspective, and typically what's the solution? So what are we going to see going forward? I think one of the biggest difference between the U.S. market and Indian markets, of course, we talked about this earlier as well. Of course, the U.S. markets are primarily driven by the insurance spending, as well as as far as the healthcare IT is concerned, there's a lot of government play as well there. In fact, when I was there in the U.S., there was a lot of, in fact, George Bush was the president at that time, and there was a specific healthcare initiative which was, to integrate the entire the NHI, LHI initiatives, the National Health Integrative Initiative, Local Health Integrative Initiatives. Separate funding was allocated for that, and basically the drive was from the top, right from the George Bush level personally. So with that kind of a drive, of course, the kind of size of the IT spending, etc., was very, very different. And now with Obama, obviously, talking, mainly about healthcare as one of the primary issues, right from his campaigning days to till now, he's still struggling to get the healthcare in place. And he having sanctioned about $21 billion for healthcare IT. I think fundamentally, I believe that even in the US, they're trying to get their house in order. And as far as IT is concerned, they believe that's an integrated part of solving their healthcare issues. Now, as far as the Indian market is concerned, I think I can see, of course, as everybody realizes, there's a huge pressure in terms of, so who's going to buy your healthcare, solutions? If you look at the macro picture, of course, this country has less than a million beds for a population of 1.2 billion, less than 1 bed to 1,000 population. Right now the basic issue for the country is that let's get the infrastructure first. Let's get the healthcare services to serve our people first. We'll talk about healthcare IT and other things later on. We need doctors. We need one hospital bed here so that somebody can at least come and get treated here. And to add to that, the other issue is that if you see the averages, if you compare the averages in terms of the healthcare IT as a spend, as percentage of the total revenue in this country, it's typically about 1 to 1.5% of the total revenue. In the US, it will be roughly about 10 to 11%. So that itself, talks about the kind of difference in terms of the focus of the healthcare IT as an investment. The other differences are obviously, in terms of how people see the value coming out of the IT, spent. Of course, here, as mentioned earlier, in terms of, the healthcare providers, have this attitude, when I can get this solution for 25,000 rupees from the next door, why should I pay you 2.5 lakhs? And that's exactly the attitude because, unfortunately, they haven't been exposed to the real healthcare IT solutions that can fundamentally, change the dynamics of their business. And I think things are changing. The good news is that things are changing. In fact, if you see in the last 5 years, lots of IT companies, a lot of homegrown IT companies have come up with a very specific focus on healthcare as a sector, which is very, very encouraging. In fact, when I came back from US, that time I thought, probably that's a good, area to get in. But, very soon I realized that all these challenges are there. But then I do also realize that, the last 4 to 5 years, if you see, the thousands of companies, small size companies which have come up with a very, very small focus solutions, somebody's like an application focus, somebody's like an integration focus, somebody's more like developing particular packages. So people have found their own niche areas so that they are trying to work on. And there are people obviously which are also working on a B2C kind of models, B2B kind of models, basically try to, at least start somewhere and then, take the story from there. It is going to take some time. It's not going to be, I would say, at least, and there's going to be a lot of competition also here. For people who are, who just came up in the last 3 to 4 years, the biggest challenge for them is going to be survival. Because obviously it's going to be very, very difficult to get the key customers because, you have to, in the process while you're getting those customers, you have to survive. What I have seen, because our fund also looks at healthcare IT as a target sector. So we have seen companies which are decent sized companies, and what we realized is that in order to survive, they are targeting customers in Middle East, in Europe, in US to basically get revenues. And in India, basically they're trying to somehow, establish some foothold. And, even at the cost of making investments in those companies, they're trying to actually somehow build a brand for themselves. I think that's possibly the right approach because if you can somehow, distribute your customer base in such a way that you actually are able to service the clients, across borders. That's the beauty of the sector. It's basically, sitting in India, you could actually, try and do, something with the customers abroad. But of course, that's a different challenge altogether in terms of, how you get those clients, etc. But I personally believe, in order to make sure that there's a continuum in terms of, building, yourself over a period of time, you need actually a diversified client base. To answer your specific question in terms of, when you're looking at specific investments, what kind of average deal sizes, what kind of investment horizon, what kind of typical support we look at providing. So that there is a challenge. There is a challenge in terms of, typically a private equity fund would look at an average deal size of at least $10 to $15 million. Unfortunately or fortunately, that's what every private equity fund wants to do. That's the least risky option for any private equity fund, because at that size, the most of the risk is already taken on the system. And the other thing is that in terms of the challenge, of the average size of an IT company or a healthcare IT company is very, very small. There are international players which are basically now playing in this country, like of course IBM is there, and lots of other players are they're basically trying to establish themselves. But of course, the private equity players will not be targeting those companies because they don't have a problem of funding. So basically, when I look at healthcare IT as an investment area, I have seen even opportunity areas where you could potentially invest about 20 to 30 crores. Which basically, and there are companies which I have seen, which would be in the range of, about, a couple of $1 million, or unfortunately, it's a very fragmented industry right now. But typically your deal size would be in that range. But obviously, majority of your deals would be much lesser than that, about 5 crore, 6 crore kind of a deal, or 10 crores, which is a big challenge. But we actually, because we run a healthcare fund, we are a healthcare life sciences sector focused fund. So when I look at a healthcare company or a healthcare IT company, of course, the problem for me is that I have to exit, right, in the next 4 to 5 years. So I have to take it to a size which, I should be able to exit from. Otherwise, how do I give returns to my investors? So whenever I'm looking at a healthcare IT company of a smaller size, I look at the perspective of, from an exit perspective, one, is there a strategic sale that is possible for me in the next 3 to 5 years? Can I sell this company to somebody else? One. Number two, if not, can I integrate this company into one of my other investing companies so that actually the size becomes much bigger? Or is it so scalable that actually I can scale it up multi-folds and it becomes an IPO candidate, maybe if not 5 years, maybe even in 6 years. So these are two, three options that typically I look at. So it becomes even more challenging, so in terms of deal selection, in terms of, so therefore I have to ask lots of questions upfront to make sure that this actually fits one of those criteria. So that's basically more or less, the key issues I would say. But I must also say that this, from a timing perspective, from the industry stage of the industry perspective, I think this is probably a good time actually to be in this sector because right now the action has started happening. You're seeing all the big projects that have started happening in India. Most of these large healthcare delivery or healthcare service providers have really started realizing that whatever has happened in the West, I mean, given the sheer size of a population and given the kind of efficiencies that can be achieved from healthcare IT systems, people have started making investments in healthcare IT. So that's the good news. But unfortunately, the only challenge in that is there are too many players trying to compete for very little business. That's something which has to be, I guess time will tell, who are able to really, get the real share of the pie. But I think I do see at least from the startups which have happened maybe in the last 3 to 4 years, I do expect at least a few of them. I mean, the success rate would be very low. Unfortunately, this is my personal belief. I mean, it won't be more than 2 or 3% of the companies which would really scale up to the levels which typically people look for. But those companies would give phenomenal returns to the investors.
Thanks, Vikram. Before leaving the session for Q&A, I would also like to have an opinion from Anupam and Mallika that if we see the health IT sector, it has seen a considerable price erosion in the past few years, making it a bit unattractive from a private equity investor perspective. And when I say price erosion, I not only mean price erosion, but a trend of commoditization is also setting into the health IT sector. So there is a big worry of that before seeing that elusive sunrise, the sun should not set on the industry. Because if we really are looking at, I mean, if you look at typical price of a PAX, which was hovering in the range of 40, 50 lakhs some time back, not more than 2-3 years, it's come down to a price bracket of 4 to 5 lakh, and people are ready to offer even at a 3.5 lakh as a complete suite. So with this trend of commoditization happening, how the successful players will sort of carve that niche out in terms of maintaining the price, because ultimately from an investor perspective, it should be profitable business for him. Otherwise, even if the company is making millions in top lines, but if the bottom lines are not in place, how you propose to tackle this challenge?
I think Mallika is better suited to answer this question. One, I don't know, probably I consider myself a misfit in this panel, largely because we do not operate in a space which is, similar to a healthcare IT company. From an IT perspective, our product or application would essentially sit on top of all of these applications. So I would probably go to a hospital which Mallika goes to either ways. After she has made a sale, even then, I would approach that hospital because our solution is completely different. One. Two, from our perspective, it is critical that if you partner with Mallika, she makes the maximum number of sales, because our key issue today is interoperability. There are thousands of vendors, there are thousands of systems. These systems do not talk to each other, and hence, the interest of the community that I represent, which is the consumer, suffers. Right? So, our core solution, like I said, is built on interoperability. Price points there, yes, it would definitely have an impact on the bottom line of our organization. But then again, the enterprise part of our business is something that we do not look at from a revenue perspective. Right? So it's not a core revenue generator for our organization, and hence the pricing pressure to that extent is minimal, on our business per se. Our core revenue generator still remains the consumer or the stakeholders interested in the consumer's health per se. Now with that, probably I'll hand over to Mallika.
Thanks. I would agree that health IT is essentially becoming a commoditized business. One way to potentially tackle this, what we've started doing is introducing a SaaS model, which is where private equity finance comes in handy, because you need a little bit of money in-house to be able to sustain that SaaS model. So SaaS is basically, I'm sure all of you would know, software as a service, where we charge a very tiny amount upfront for the implementation of the solution, and then we charge per registration, per surgery, per inpatient day. And we find that a lot of customers, especially those who are setting up new hospitals, they tend to, they're very attracted by a SaaS solution. And they feel that, okay, the provider is not out to gyp me. They essentially, they grow if we grow. And I think that is one way that we're finding that we're able to tackle this. Why are we different from, anybody can come in and provide a SaaS solution. So how is one company different from another? One is, of course, if they've got funding. The second is if you ride on the coattails of a larger player. So what we do is try and offer a SaaS model through IBM. We collect upfront from IBM. IBM continues to finance the customer. HCL is also now entering the SaaS space, and they've got two different solutions for the smaller hospital segment and for the mid-sized hospital segment, and I expect their rollout of the next 6 months as well. So that's one way. Another way would be, of course, to bid for the larger government and for international projects to be able to sustain yourselves while the Indian market starts to take off. At some point, customers will realize, care providers will realize that implementation and project management are very important and are key to the success of an HIS implementation. It's not just the solution, it's also how you implement it, how quickly you implement it, and how trained your users are in it. So I believe that it is this piece that will differentiate a successful company from one that is not so successful. This base solution, different providers have different, levels of functionality. They offer different benefits to the user of the solution. But it's how you implement, how fast you implement, that will make the difference. The third, like I was talking about earlier, is to bid for international projects. So one of the things that we've done now is bid for, we were shortlisted as one of the prime vendors, and then we bid for a project in Singapore where the government is essentially looking to automate 1,500 clinics across Singapore. So we're hoping, and similarly we've bid for other projects as well. This is where we're hoping that the majority of our revenues will come from over the coming year, and I would urge other IT providers, I mean, not at our expense, but I would urge other IT providers to probably do the same. That's my feedback on it.
So effectively, we can conclude that the reduction in the cost of transaction has helped into the further penetration of IT, and which is a sort of advantage for Anupam's company, because the user base is so high that the cost of transaction pinch is not felt by the end user, even if he has to pay. I mean, right now, I guess you are working on a Google-like service where someone who opts for a premium service will have to pay, and someone who opts for a base service doesn't have to pay. So, yeah, in fact, that is the way out. If we have to enter big time into India, the capital cost will act as a big constraint, because hospitals don't have that sort of fund. They are too diverse, they are too fragmented, they are too small in size. So if we change our traditional mold from a product mentality to a service mentality, I think that is the way to go forward. And from here onwards, I will leave it for a question and answer session. I would request you to put your name and also tell whom the question is directed to.
My name is Pradeep Agarwal. I work for a consulting company called Faith Healthcare Private Limited. Question is to Mallika. You just mentioned that the Indian market, the private market, healthcare, IT is commoditization, but you are eyeing on the public sector, the government and international clients. Do you feel that government clients are anywhere different from private clients, or the kind of bidding process or award process is going to give any kind of mileage other than what the private sector is facing for?
I would say the government sector is a lot harder. The tendering process is so severe that, you know how it is with tenders. The lowest bidder wins based on technical criteria. The advantage with government projects is the scale. So I would say that somebody sitting in Punjab or Haryana would be willing to pay anywhere between 3 and 10 crores for a complete implementation, which would be pan hospital. And we would learn as we implement across each hospital. So by the time you get to the 40th or the 50th hospital, you find that, you're able to get the systems in place. So the advantage is only with the ticket size, which keeps the company going until it is able to get better, smaller hospital projects, which give you less revenue. In terms of actually implementing there, and in terms of the competitiveness about the price, it's much worse than the private space. You don't always collect on the total amount of money either, but it's just actually the ticket size that makes the difference.
Yeah, I can see. If you see the healthcare IT in public sector, if you are looking the pan-state presence, like the bank-funded health system projects are already executed in Maharashtra, Orissa, Punjab, UP and Uttaranchal, and West Bengal. And all the states, either TCS, Wipro, Wilbur Smith, and PricewaterhouseCoopers. These 4-5 companies has already done the implementation. Now, there the implementation was part of HIS and HMIS together, where the hospital management system was a part of health information system. Now, the new initiative which all the IT, small IT companies are eyeing on, that's basically part of National Rural Health Mission, which is talking about now a standalone health facility, hospital-based MIS. And now that backbone in the hospital IT infrastructure is going to be given by the state government. So if we see there in any of the state, like UP, Uttaranchal has not been able to take initiative, reason being they have already implemented 3 years back the original system. But Haryana, of course, there are 22 hospitals. If I see 22 hospitals and 22 hospitals means 22 numbers of implementation, I do not think the market is still live in the private sector. It might be that we have learned, now we are thinking of that we have learned from private sector, there is no space. So for time being, we will be looking, targeting at the government one. But finally, we need to come back to the private sector only where there is a number exists. Government has a very small number exists.
I would agree with you, sir. When I talked of the government sector, I was talking about sustainability for us in the short term. The other thing is a lot of the hospital projects that have been implemented. I'll give you the example of the TCS project that was implemented in Punjab 7 years ago, 50 hospitals out of 171. They are now tendering for an upgrade. So a group of vendors have qualified for that process. Some of us have submitted bids. So that is one place where we hope to be able to do a little more for the government. The issue remains that we believe that the value is still in individual hospital implementations, private hospital implementations. The only one thing that I would say is the government, in some cases, I'll give you an example, the specific example that we're talking about. We're working with the ICMR, the Indian Council of Medical Research, where they're looking to pilot a national online health diary for people in rural areas. It's only at the pilot stage, but from a technology perspective, the kind of challenge that gives me, the kind of brand that gives me, an individual small hospital implementation, unless it's a large hospital group, it would not. So from that perspective also, the government brings a unique angle. Ultimately, our bread and butter is always going to be the private hospitals. It's not going to come from anywhere else. But till they take off, till insurance takes off, this is where we are.
So if we don't have any further question, can I ask Dipanjan to wrap up the session? And in fact, it was a sort of information exchange, a good information exchange, but simultaneously true is the fact that what you rightly pointed out, that we might end up in a stage where Microsoft doesn't give a damn about what is being sold at Nehru Place, but is very conscious about what is being used by the respective governments. That thing might happen into the near future, where all these TCSs and companies like that are only conscious about the government spending, and considering the typical deal size for a small hospital to be too small for them even to think about it, they leave that space wide open for the private, for the small investors. So that is one shape which the industry might take ultimately.
The insurance providers and the healthcare companies, the hospitals. Is this what I understood?
No, sir, we don't. Yeah. So we don't. One of the key things, which is important specifically in the health data space is confidentiality and privacy of the records. Right. So as a consumer, I would never want to share my records with somebody if I know that this record is going to be shared by an insurance person or to a healthcare provider or whosoever who can probably misuse this, and which will also have, apart from the other impacts, if it's shared with an insurance guy, it will also have a financial impact on me in terms of rising premiums and so on and so forth. So we don't do that. The core of our business is to say we would do that only with a explicit permission from a consumer. So as a consumer, if you know that sharing of your records would result into and I'm again talking, let's say, monetary benefits. If sharing of your records results into, let's say, a discount of 20% on X service or 30% on particular product, would you want to do it or would you not want to do it? If you do not want to do it, the records are not shared. If you do, I mean, knowing fully well, what is the impact of that record, and only to the extent that the access control is governed by you as a consumer, right? So you would, kind of go ahead and share that part. Yes, in certain cases we do share metadata, which is without, identifier of the consumer. So, for example, we might want to share blood test reports of 100 diabetic people, male 35 years or above, with a company who is interested in that kind of a data, but that does not identify individuals, and hence, that does not have any implication on the confidentiality and privacy of the records.
Thank you.
Jayant, I have a question actually. I'm sorry. Sorry, I was too close to the sound box. So I was wondering that, we have been tracking this segment for quite a while. It's been almost like more than 3.5 years that eHealth magazine came into existence. I was wondering, although the question will be a little technical, maybe because since we have 3 people from the health IT side, I was wondering whether the adoption of more standards-based health IT practices in India, whether it has any linkage in terms of the overall growth of the health IT segment and vis-a-vis the investment opportunity or potential for such companies, particularly from investors like Vikram or many other who have been with us or not with us. So is there any, because there is a lot of problem that we find when we interact with people from the hospital side, that most of the systems, although they have people say that the systems have started talking to each other, we are now more going towards more standards-based environment, and in the years to come that will improve. So, but we have people who have worked in US. I mean, Vikram said he has himself worked in US. So, do the panel think that more standard-based practice is actually going to help the overall health IT segment, and then link it up with the investment potential of that? If you can reflect, all of you.
In fact, I would like Malika to answer, but just to throw a few words. What you are saying is absolutely right. We had a practice of doctors working in silos inside a hospital only, where a same patient who is being treated by 4 doctors within the same hospital need to carry his record from this place to that place, and many times in cases like cancer, he has to redo the whole process again if he visits a new doctor. So definitely increasing adoption towards standardized products and services is going to drive this market, but who is going to be a beneficiary of that whole thing? Will it be a big time players, established players, IBMs and TCSs of the world, or will it be niche and startups who will be able to cash onto this?
Okay, if I look at it from my perspective, one of the things that we've been looking to do is get HIPAA compliance, which is one more, and basically get systems to talk to each other. Now, standards cost money. So for an individual small IT company, it is difficult to adopt standards, and one needs to make it a priority in order to do it, because you need to basically budget for standards adoption, for improving processes within the company so that you adhere to certain standards. The advantage that it gives you in India today is that your system can talk to another system. The provider today, the care provider today, is not that interested in talking to another system, So education is needed for us to be able to benefit from the investment you make in standards. You would need the provider to feel, okay, I need my system to talk to another system, to my hospital and say Bhiwani if I'm sitting in Delhi. Issues that we face today is hospitals are perfectly happy to do double entry between systems. So they're saying, okay, we'll get them to email the report and we'll put in the data ourselves. So I think ultimately what's going to drive standards adoption is penetration of health insurance. Today, health insurance is not highly penetrated in the country. When we find close to 70-80% penetration of health insurance, I believe that standards adoption will be a norm, and at that point it will make sense for smaller companies to invest in standards. I think it would be that way around rather than, standards leading to, better IT practice across the country and it benefiting IT providers. This is actually a candid view. I don't know, perhaps some of the investors would have something.
I'll just like to add to that. For us, the opportunity lies in the absence of standards. That's our core business model, right? So we said, there are no standards, which is why the world, forget the world, at least India needs a framework like Healthizin, so that the systems can talk to each other. And probably I'll probably go one step ahead of, what Malika was mentioning. I totally agree to that. Is, it's not an issue between, hospitals having one branch in, let's say, Delhi and the other in, Hyderabad. It's also a question of, inter-hospital exchanges, right? And the issue, to my understanding, whatever limited understanding I have, will never be addressed by the hospital themselves. Because for them, there is limited or no benefit in terms of one hospital being able to share the data with another hospital, which competes with it in the healthcare services space, delivery space. I think the issue, like she is rightly pointing out, has to be either driven by an insurance provider, like it has been done, in some of the Western countries, by the government, like it has been done in England, Denmark, Taiwan, for that matter, or by a neutral service provider. By neutrality, I mean, no adherence to a particular stakeholder's benefits, which will essentially benefit the consumer. Right? So if I, as a consumer, expect my records to be available to the Apollo in Hyderabad after I have gone for a surgery in Wokhad in Mumbai, it's not that the Apollo or the Wokhad or the Fortis would do it. Right? It's something that has to come from the consumer, a demand which is driven by the consumer, which would probably lead the supply on the healthcare side and evolve the whole system. So that's kind of my take on the whole thing.
I'd like to say when we've tried to integrate with systems which are HL7 compliant or compliant to some other standards, it's taken us maybe 10% less time than integrating with a system which doesn't claim to have these standards in place. It's still very difficult to integrate, even if somebody says that they are built to a particular set of standards. But having said that, what has happened is on the other side, we've had tools which have come up now, which are available to all of us, which make it much easier for us to communicate between databases, even though data came from totally different applications. So it has today become a lot easier for us to interact with data which was created by other applications. But what has really made a difference, and I'm sure the others will also agree, over the last year or so is the impetus that NABH has had in this country. So we can go into a hospital and tell them, what are you doing about NABH, and then get their attention. Because as we spoke about a little earlier, the hospital, first question the hospital asks you is, why should I spend 20 lakhs or 50 lakhs or whatever it is, why should I do that? They don't have a real reason to go out and make that expenditure. But NABH has given them a good reason to do that. And I think if the government were to realize the significant benefits that electronic medical records bring to patients. I mean, there's numerous very large studies. And there's a study which says that a properly implemented electronic medical record will reduce the incidence of death in a hospital by 15%. I mean, that's a fantastic number. That's just incredible. 15% of fewer people will die in a hospital if you have a proper electronic medical record system in there. So if the government and people who can do this can go out and say, you really need to do this for the health of the patients, then I think that's when the push will come and all of us will wear bigger smiles.
In fact, if there's nothing else, I would lastly say that I totally agree with what Anupam has said, that it will be a consumer-driven thing because hospitals don't have any motive to invest into a setup where they are able to, two hospitals speaking different language can communicate to each other. They have no motive altogether. And moreover, they are competing interests which will not allow it to happen. So along with what the government of India is doing as recommended by the National Knowledge Commission about creating a e-health portal and where a vital database of the person is online and he can retrieve it. So I think, and along with increase in penetration are some of the vital steps that will sort of gradually force the healthcare providers to go towards a standardized solution rather than they doing on their own.
On the standards?
Yeah, and how the adoption of standards actually differentiates the overall SIT industry?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I agree with Malika, what she said. You know, it's ultimately, you know, it has to be driven by insurance. And I think you know, the insurance penetration and the healthcare standards will go hand in hand. I don't think, you know, you have to have first penetration and then you have to get standards in place. I think unless you get standards in place, your insurance growth will not happen. The other thing is that, you know, I was really surprised when I heard that, you know, if you look at the insurance regulator in this country, you know, the IRDA, and if you ask a specific question, who's the regulator for the healthcare insurance in this country today? The answer is there's none. There's no healthcare insurance regulator in this country today. So that's where we are today in this country. Now, of course, you know, ultimately the standards are going to be driven by, you know, the regulators, the insurance companies themselves. And then, you know, we're not just talking about the healthcare, the IT standards just on the healthcare delivery side. The standards across various other areas, like, you know, on the clinical standards, you have CDISC standards, you know, various systems talking to each other. You have HL7 standards. For the insurance portability, you have HIPAA standards. You know, and then, you know, for procedures and diagnostics, you have ICD-10 codes and you have CPT-4 codes. You know, unless you start getting, you know, those things in place, it's going to be very, very difficult. You know, for you know, I mean, right now the situation is people don't even understand, you know, what are the standards. You know, I mean, we are at the stage where, you know, these are only the IT players who understand. If you look at it from the government perspective, they will just raise their eyebrows and try to understand what standards are you talking about. That's the situation. You have to educate the government. You have to actually help them understand, you know, why do you need these standards? What are the standards in the first place? So I think, in fact, I was on another panel at CII and another government official sitting next to me, and this is exactly the debate that was happening there. You know, basically, you know, standards is something which the government has to, you know, first be educated on, and then the government has to really drive this along with the private sector. But it's very, very important.
Yes, Rajiv. In fact, it's quite interesting that we are talking about the standards in the procedure form. I mean, my mind goes to a particular department in the health. Let us take an X-ray department. I mean, how many agencies, or even say even the government, though they have put BARC has put some standard for taking an X-ray of a human being, and this much dose goes in, and this much we have to monitor it. And when we ask those people, I mean, how much you are monitoring it and how perfect you are, even the CT is going for this radiation factor. I mean, there's a big question comes. I mean, if we are not aware of those standards till date, and what the procedure standards are going to do with us. I mean, education, yes, it is. We really have to educate our customer, our patient. We have to educate. Unless until they demand something. I mean, I know, I mean, the X-rays in the field, I mean, working for the last 15 years, not even a single day they have been calibrated. CT is operating over there, and even if you go talk about the countries like USA, all those, they have got the AICR and all those standards, I mean, where they pay like, even for like in lakhs of rupees, I mean, for standardizing is small equipment every year. I mean, unless the customers are educated, how the things can move on there. Procedure comes afterwards only. I mean, if we have to standardize the data, and we're talking about the equipment talking to each other. I mean, I know in 2000, I mean, I was talking about the teleradiology to AIIMS and some other good hospital. They said, okay, bring the equipment and show us. We coordinated with some company in Canada, and there was a huge station involved in that, for teleradiology. Once they got it delivered to the AIIMS, the exhibition was over because there was so much hassle involved in clearing those things from the customs. And now if I talk about that for the last 10 years, those teleradiology, I can make it on my personal computer, anytime, anywhere. Things are moving so fast and we are so slow in doing the things, at least in the health. And definitely when we put everything E before anything, it matters a lot these days.
Going in my mind, like when we start talking about the procedure, we are putting the IT everywhere. We say, okay,
this thing we standardize, this IT has to be implemented over there. Go to the PHC, go to the CSC. Still the data says, the maximum customers are still in the field. They are not in the NCRs and all those hospitals. Those hospitals are there ready to spend for looking into the medical tourism, all those things, to maintain their standards. But that is very a small percentage of the whole story. When she talks about the government, she's right. There is a lot many things are going to be done. They are under the process. When the government starts thinking about how we can do all the transparency starting from the PSC, CSC onwards. So many things. But still, they have got that X-ray which is not DICOM compatible. Even I have to send the image. How can I send it? So when you start making those type of things available over there, there's many things have to be done over there. And money lies over there. I know, there's a lot of money lies over there. So not only think about the hospitals, very big hospitals who are there trying to maintain their standards of the hotel. There are so many things down that stairs where you can implement so many things over there.
In fact, that can be considered as one key takeaway, because there are two distinct Indias which are operating simultaneously in India. One is, which we all know about, the respective vicinities which we live in. And then there is simultaneously another India where leave DICOM and HIPAA compliance and HL7, ICD code, they don't even have access to basic healthcare. So I think, but there has been a change. If you see few of the government programs which have run, typically we sort of point fingers, blame government all the time for all the bad things happening into the country, for them not being able to do. But if you see that if the government has properly implemented few programs where the implementation mechanism, Janani Suraksha Yojana, because I have been tracking that scheme particularly, Janani Suraksha Yojana has been a typically successful scheme where it has shown that monetary allocation along with a dedication towards implementation and taking the message to the common man will result into the patient coming to the health center. And that is how you are sort of providing that strength to the end user in terms of making choices. And we were doing some study on this, and to our utter surprise, what we came to know that many of the PSC, CSCs complain that the delivery cases are outnumbering other cases, which itself is a proof of success of a government program if it is run in a proper manner. So it is not only a question of IT or medical technology or delivery. It is a multifaceted problem, and there are various stakeholders involved at every stage, and everyone needs to play their own part. But simultaneously, we also need to keep in mind that IT companies or medical technology companies or delivery companies don't work in silos, because ultimately what will happen, that will not work towards market creation. We'll be just fighting for that small share of pie which already exists. With that, I would like to thank all the guests on the stage, and again would like to thank eHealth for giving us this opportunity to assemble over here. Thanks again.